President, I come to the floor today, and this being tax week, people all around the country send in their tax returns. The deadline has just passed yesterday, the 17th. So people are focused a lot on what happens in Washington. They think about the IRS. They think about the money that is being sent and how that money is being spent. Well, as people pay their annual tax bills, I want to remind Americans about how this administration, the Obama administration, is spending tax dollars on actually the president's unpopular health care law. And that's why I come to the floor today, as I have every week since the health care law has been passed, with a doctor's second opinion about the health care law. And at the time it was passed, I said, you know, there'd be some new revelation, some unintended consequence, something new that people would learn week after week. And as someone who's practiced medicine for almost a quarter of a century, taking care of families in Wyoming, I wanted to offer a doctor's second opinion, because I've felt from the beginning that in spite of the many promises that the president made, that the bill that was actually passed and signed into law is one that is bad for patients, bad for providers, the nurses and the doctors who take care of those patients, and terrible for taxpayers. And so I come to the floor because it seems to me that instead of using much of the money to improve medical care in America, this administration is devoting hundreds of millions of dollars to whom? The Internal Revenue Service. In fact, the Hill newspaper reported on April 9th of this year that the Obama administration is quietly sending an additional $500 million to the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. Actually, the headline is, Obama administration diverts $500 million to IRS to implement health care reform law. And I ask unanimous consent, Mr. President, that I could introduce this article into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. The money is transferred outside of the normal appropriations process, and that's a concern. The money is transferred outside the normal appropriations process, and it goes to the very tax agency that is responsible to implement many of the key provisions of the health law. You would think that maybe you'd have doctors and nurses implementing many of the provisions of the health law. No, we have the IRS. This includes the controversial and unprecedented mandate that all Americans must buy a government-approved product, health insurance. Well, remember that the Supreme Court just held hearings on this unprecedented mandate. 70% of Americans believe that it is unconstitutional. They believe that either part or all of the health care law ought to be ruled unconstitutional. And yet the Hill article goes on, and it says that this Obama Health and Human Services Department has to date transferred almost $200 million to the IRS over the past 2 years and plans to send another $300 million this year. These secretive transfers hide the true cost of the health care law. They also make it difficult for Congress to perform the agency oversight that is part of our obligations. So I look at this, Mr. President, and I say this law is bad. It is bad, I believe, for our patients and providers and taxpayers. And I look at the way it's been structured and the way that this money is being transferred, and I think it just highlights the problems with the law. What does the IRS intend to do? Well, they want to hire more than 300 new employees next year to implement the tax code changes, such as the taxes imposed on drug companies, device manufacturers, and health insurers. This bill is a laundry list of taxes and fees. The IRS also has to implement and monitor the law's priciest component, the exchange subsidies. For this, the IRS is asking Congress to fund another 537 new employees dedicated to administering just the subsidies. Now, last week, Mr. President, the Ways and Means Chairman, Chairman Camp, sent a letter to the IRS Commissioner asking that the Commissioner provide specific details about these reports. Chairman Camp specifically asked the IRS Commissioner to tell the committee how many employees are being hired and which tax increases the agents will be working on. You know, the American people deserve to know how their dollars are being spent, where these tax dollars are being used, what the IRS is doing with the money. They deserve to know because the health care law actually increases the IRS's power to insert itself into the American people's lives. So how is it that the health care law increases the IRS's power to insert itself into Americans' lives? Well, by one, having the IRS verify that Americans have acceptable government-approved insurance. Also, by having the IRS penalize Americans if they do not have acceptable government-approved insurance. Also, by having the IRS confiscate Americans' tax refund dollars if they don't have government-approved insurance. And finally, by having the IRS having additional power in terms of auditing our American citizens' lives. Mr. President, this is all included in the health care law. This is not health care reform. The IRS should never be allowed to intrude into the private health care decisions of the American people. The American people deserve to know how this alleged $500 million transfer is being spent and how many additional IRS agents will be hired to investigate their private health care decisions. When Americans send their hard-earned dollars to Washington, they want to make sure that their money is being spent wisely, that the American people want to know that they are getting value for their tax dollars. They don't want their dollars to create more bureaucracy and further invade their privacy. And so, Mr. President, I come to the floor today, as I have over the last several years since the health care law has been passed, with a doctor's second opinion. This health care law did not provide the American people with what they wanted, which was the care they need from a doctor that they want at a price they can afford. Instead, what they're doing is seeing that the President's promises have been broken. The President promised if you like your care, you can keep it. We now know that that's not going to be true for many, many Americans. And the President promised that health care costs would actually go down instead of going up. And he told Congress and he told others that the health care insurance costs would drop $2,500 per family. Instead, what families across the country have seen is their health care premiums have gone up by about $2,100 a year since the health care law has gone into effect, rather than going down. So we hear the President's promises and we see the reality on the ground. And so when I travel Wyoming and talk to folks and say, how many of you believe under the health care law that your own costs are going to go up, in spite of the President's promises they would go down, every hand goes up. And when I ask the question, how many of you believe that the quality of your own care, which is what people are concerned about, their own care, their own family, how many of you believe that the quality of your own care will go down? Again, every hand goes up. That's not what Americans want, paying more and getting less. And that is why it is time, Mr. President, to repeal and replace this terrible health care law. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.